But you never know that you could. And when you feel that way, ain't it good, good dancing in the red and gold. Dancing in the red and gold.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the 49er Faithfully UK show. Now, I bet you're wondering, why is it Lee that's opening the show tonight? Well, I have the honour of opening the show with it being the podcast number 300, once I actually get it edited and published, of course. But yeah, tonight is our 300th episode as a podcast. So Paul has given me that honour, and tonight we're going to talk about all sorts of different things. So I'm going to pass across to Paul, let him get on and do the introductions, and let him try and keep us in order. Because we all know that is a huge job. Over to you, Paul.
Cheers, Lee. As you said, Faithful, this is episode 300. So we thought we'd mark the special occasion by recording this episode live, but we will be publishing it as a podcast. It is also the last episode of the current season, as the new league year starts on March the 12th. Joining us, as usual, Lee, to talk all things 49ers, 5 years, 5 months and 24 days since his first appearance as a guest. It is your usual host, Mr. Gareth Ellis.
Good evening, everyone. Has it been that long? Wow, it has. Yeah, 2019. I'm pretty sure 2019 season. It's my first show.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, Gareth,
Remember
you
it well.
may get asked about that date later on, buddy, so I'm glad that rings a bell. And last but not least, it is, of course, your Discord king, or as we call him, Naji Kara.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
So
when was Naji's first episode then?
Well, we can go down that rabbit hole already, because I was going to ask about that. So, do you know, Naji, when your first episode
I was
was?
just about to say, does
I
Naji
think
know?
it was during the pandemic. So I don't know. I can't remember.
So, Naji Kara, your first appearance was the 13th of September, 2019.
Ooh.
There we go.
Gareth Ellis, your first appearance was the 10th of September, 2019. So I was quite surprised you two were quite close together.
Yeah. So I remember, I remember both episodes because I actually recorded those in the Premier Inn at Bristol, the one where we all stayed for the Bristol meetup, because I happened to be working down Bristol at the time, and obviously doing the show during the week. I had to do it from my hotel room. I remember my connection wasn't particularly good, but I still managed to get the show recorded and edited.
Was that
Yeah.
pre-season? September 10th.
Nah, that's
Must
the
have been.
one.
No, that'll have been the very first game.
Was it?
Yeah, week
Was it
one.
week one? That's
So what-
that's not what I remember as my first game. But there we are.
I don't remember. What did you say for me? What was it? The week after, basically.
Yours was, yeah, so I think Gareth and Lee did a preview show, and then you've
I
done
did
a
the
review show. Now, when I obviously went back, the reason Lee introduced the show, obviously, when I first started, it was Lee and Brian Davis. And then what you used to do, Lee, is introduce certain guests. So my first appearance was in December 2018. And I was talking to Tracy because she remembered me being very nervous. And then I couldn't have done too well, chaps, because there was a long gap from me doing a pod to get invited back on. So, but mixing that up there, Lee, Gareth and Naji, your first appearance together was the 23rd of December 2019.
Okay.
Me, Lee and Naji was the 10th of January 2020. And Gareth, mine, yours and Lee's first appearance was the 17th of January 2020. Do you know, chaps, when was the Awesome Foursome's debut?
No, I don't.
It was it the Super Bowl preview that year, the 2019 season.
2019 season.
Well,
So,
Gareth, the show was called
early Feb.
The Revenge Tour Begins. That might have given
yeah.
someone a clue of when it was. So, any guesses, Lee? Do you reckon? I've got the date, obviously, done my homework.
Right, so I think... Right, when's that going to be? Is that going to be the show... It's got... Is it the Super Bowl review show?
No, it's
Gotta
the
be.
10th of September 2020.
Right, so
Wow.
So exactly a
Well,
year
yeah.
after
Yeah.
Gareth came on the show, and basically from that day, the Awesome Foursome has been the regular. So I don't know whether I think we had a chat that off season, and we decided rather than getting different guests on, we wanted to kind of keep the format with the four. Obviously, there's been weeks when we've
Yeah.
jumped around a little bit. Now, when I was digging this out, I'm sure you're all aware of the rule of 100, which states to be good at something, you need to put at least 100 hours or completed a task 100 times to be good. And as this is episode 300, I don't know what our excuse is, chaps, because
We just winging it every
oh
week.
dear, oh dear.
Winging it.
Oh yeah,
So,
those
so
days
Paul,
when we're all
do you know
recording
when
on
my very first podcast was?
I didn't.
Was it
I was
with
going to
Brian
ask you.
in, like,
Yeah.
2015 or 2016, I would say.
No. So you should know this because this was on Facebook 2 weeks ago.
I'm going to say you uploaded it, so I thought.
I did, yeah.
No.
So my first podcast was 11 years ago. 11 years ago? Yeah, 11 years ago. It was the 24th of February 2014, and I joined as a guest along with David Ellicott, Alan Bales, Andy Hodgson, Brian Davis was on, Michael Anthony Thomas was on, and I'm sure there was somebody else as well. I remember there was a few of us on there. I think there was 6 of us actually. There was the 6 of us, and it's because 4 of us had all been out to San Francisco at the same time. That was obviously my first game. And the post that I put in was, I never expected from that moment, doing my very first podcast, that suddenly I'd have done 300 podcasts, and then all the other live shows I've done on top of that. It's been a bit of a journey, that's for sure. And like you said, Paul, I mean, your first podcast, you felt as though you were nervous. I think the first season, I felt I was nervous. And I didn't have video. I mean,
That's what
not
I
having the
was
video
saying.
on there,
We used to do
kind of.
this over Skype. Which
Yeah, RIP Skype.
And you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, rest in peace, Skype. This is all
yeah.
happening at the same time.
So mine was 12th of December 2018, and I'd only started seeing Tracy in the July. And I remember, as you said, getting very nervous about this podcast. But when you think now we've got all this, it was on a phone. Like you said, no video footage. And I was like, now, you talked about the live shows. I haven't got the live stats, but the average episode of the podcast is approximately an hour. So on that basis, I have the shortest episode we've ever done, and I have the longest episode we've ever done. So I thought we'd go with the shortest show first, because we're not known for being short. Now, the show was called The One Where They Kept It Short. So any guesses of the season, because where it might be from?
I don't think it's too long ago.
2020, I would have said.
Yep,
Yeah,
Gareth's right there, 2020, yeah.
Yeah, the COVID season, things going badly, probably towards the end, where it must have been a bad performance. Maybe only
Was it the
two of
Jets
us
review?
on the show.
The Jets
Something
Was
like
there
review
not
that.
3 of
or
us?
something.
Was it not me, Paul, and Gareth?
Yeah, there was the 3 of us, and it was
We just wanted to get it done.
it was after the Packers, when we weren't sure if we were going to play because of COVID, and then we basically played
And
the
we
game.
had no one.
We had nobody at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
23 minutes.
I was going to say 23 minutes. Yeah, 23 minutes.
Oh, great.
I think that record may stand. I can't see us ever going under that, chaps.
No chance.
Yeah,
No
it's funny.
chance.
Remember, it was Richie James, I think, was our top receiver. Was that the game? Because
That
all
was.
the receivers
Yeah.
had been in contact with someone, and it's basically, you're not getting any wide receivers. So we had
Yeah.
Richie James doing everything in terms of wide receivers, punt returns, kick returns, and then maybe a couple of guys we'd signed off the street who I don't think we ever saw again.
So
I remember it just be going into the game, just going, we've lost.
yeah, I think it was a Thursday night game as well. Now
Yeah,
the
maybe.
longest show, I don't know whether, because with the lives it gets mixed in, but the longest show was an hour and 44 minutes. So I'll give you the time,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to know if you could think off the top of your head which show it was.
I think it's an award show. I think it was the 2019 award show or something like that.
A bit later, I think.
Later, you think?
Yeah, maybe. I think probably a season preview or a season review.
What was the 5 of us on the show?
No, there was just me and you, Lee.
Oh my god.
Ah.
So
You taking into consideration the live?
So it was
Yeah, yeah.
technically
It's
a podcast
Patrick Willis.
because it was the Patrick Willis because you
Yeah,
uploaded that.
Patrick
So
Willis.
I've got these stats off
Wow.
Apple Pod. But to be fair, Nadji,
Right.
Gowland deserved an award for the rabbit hole because that was the episode where we weren't sure that Patrick was joining us. So we started off the show with Jordan, and then we got a text halfway through saying, "If you can keep going a bit longer, he might join us." So we were like,
No problem.
and speaking of awards, Lee, do you want to get it over and done with now, buddy? For those people who weren't
Come
on social
let's do it,
media.
let's do it.
I can't fit it on my shelves. I'm going to have to build a shelf just so that I can sit there.
Oh, what a shame.
So for those people listening, at the weekend, I finally handed over the prediction trophy to Lee. Now, the reason that's relevant, chaps,
He's
is
saying he handed it over. I had to prize it out of his hands to get it because he didn't want to leave go.
he didn't. I did not know.
He
But
actually
it's,
ran off, I had to run after him to get it.
it is relevant, though, Lee, because obviously with us living so close, we've met quite a few times. Now, can you remember the first time that you met each of us, Lee?
I can remember the first time I met Nadji. I mean, I'll never ever forget that. In fact, I remember the first time I met Gareth. It was up in Edinburgh.
Same.
Yep, that didn't work.
The funny thing was, obviously, up in Edinburgh when I met Gareth, I knew I was meeting him for the first time. And I didn't really think anything of it.
I'd been
When I
on
was
a
in
couple of
Vegas-
shows, and that was about it,
You
I
had,
think, by
yeah.
then. So,
And what I mean by that, when I didn't think anything of it, it's because it just felt natural. Yeah. The strange thing was, I was sat in Vegas having my breakfast the day after flying out there, and Nadji's walking along, and he says, "Are you going to come give us a cuddle?" And I'm thinking, "What do you mean?" He says, "It's the first time we've ever met each other," and that honestly, it blew me away as soon as
Yeah,
Nadji
that
said
was-
that. And I thought, Jesus, you're right. And I mean, you'd only just been on the podcast there, Gareth, early on that season.
2019.
So I think it was once or twice we'd done it. But with Nadji, I mean, I'd spent a good 2-3 years every week, 2-3 times a week, talking on the podcast. So it just felt strange because it
That
felt
was
as though
weird,
I knew Nadji so well. And as soon as he turned around and explained to us, this is the first time we've actually met, it just blew us away.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah,
why it was relevant, Nadji, because I'm smiling because when I was putting this together, I thought, I remember you two telling me that conversation that, like, you were like, I thought it was a bit weird. He didn't even, like, shake my hand. He didn't hug me. It's the first time we met, and of all places to meet in Vegas.
in Vegas, yeah. Good time. Yeah.
So, obviously, you've Gareth in Edinburgh. I've said before, we met in Manchester, but can you remember when the four of us met for the first time in person?
must have been Leeds.
Yeah,
I think
but-
that's the first time I met
It was
Nadji.
definitely Leeds.
Yeah.
In the
the Falcon
box.
game on it.
Yeah, the Falcons. Yeah.
Well, I was fortunate enough, Nadji, to meet you for the first time for the watch party. That wasn't a watch party where Nick Clark told us to keep it quiet, but then let everybody know he was there. And similar to our story, yours and Leeds in Vegas, me and you straight over, man hug. And like you said, Lee, because we've been doing the pod for a number of years and chatting, it felt weird after COVID as well, kind of the world opening back up. But yes, you're right, Gareth. Our first meeting was in Leeds, so that was pretty good. So yeah, that I thought a trip down memory lane. Any other?
When you were at the Super Bowl, the 20 in February 2020.
Nadji wasn't
Nadji
there, I don't
wasn't.
think.
No,
Not in
Nadji,
Newcastle,
but
yeah.
you were, Paul.
Yeah, so but there was the four of us, wasn't it? I mean, the,
Oh, of course,
the
you
four
and
of
Leeds,
us.
Yeah.
So
You know what you're getting us worried, Paul? That was quite a good hastily corner, that.
it was, yeah. Well, you said at the start you wanted to introduce it all and mix it all up. So, any other memories, chaps, or should we give these good people some football to talk about?
No, we're
I think from the
indulging
early
ourselves.
days. Yeah, I think from the early days, obviously, me and Brian had that episode. It was the greatest episode ever, which I couldn't air because the recording failed on Brian's end. So this is before we were doing the Skype. So you recorded locally, I kind of stitched them together and then published. And it was an absolutely brilliant episode. It just flowed so well. It was really dynamic. We felt relaxed. It was literally like two people just being sat in a bar, having a drink, talking about the football. And we got to the end and we were so pleased with ourselves. We thought, that was brilliant. And then about 10 minutes later, Brian got in touch with us. He says, "You're not going to believe this. Yeah, didn't record." I thought, "Oh, I don't believe it. I don't believe it."
You and Brian did some good shows in 2018 in a very dirty season.
Trying conditions.
Yeah.
To be about.
I think that started the whole process of let's leave it on a positive. Every show we had to leave, so we got the negatives out of the way to begin with, and then we went on to the positives. Because I think I've said this many times, and it's the way I've wanted the group to be run, where too much negativity just drags you down, and it gives you this. It just wears you down to the point where
It breeds
you hate
more
watching the game.
negativity.
It does. So I always wanted to keep it positive, and I mean, obviously, me and Brian had an agreement. This is how we're going to run the show, and believe it or not, Gareth, you weren't the first one to suffer me. Brian was. So the idea was we'd script what we were going to say, and we'd do that, and then I'd completely ignore my script.
Shock horror! Breaking news!
It's not something that I've kind of getting into over the years. I did it from day one. I had a script there, and I just didn't bother to read it. What I kind of did is just put keywords down, because I felt as though if I put keywords down, it would come across a lot better from myself. If I read a script, you know I'm reading a script. Definitely. Because I can't read a script and make it sound lifelike. I can't give it any life at all. Whereas if I just see a word, a name, a player, straight away it gets my mind thinking, so I can talk it through. And talk it through just like you're in a pub. You know what I mean? It's that type of thing. And so I just wanted to say to Gareth, you were not the first to suffer me. Poor Brian had me for a good 2 to 3 seasons.
So you're saying you're the exception to not only the rule of 100 if you've been doing this for 11 years. What you're saying, Lee, is I'm joking. But you talked about that episode with Brian. I remember a Saturday morning episode where it was just me and Nadji. I can't remember why it was a Saturday morning and we were both in charge of the controls. And I'm pretty sure, Nadji, we did 25 minutes and it went off, didn't it? And we were like, oh.
I pressed the wrong button. We had to redo it all again.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, that was fun.
I haven't gone back to listen to some of those early shows. I should do. I think obviously we've all found our voices a bit since then, and I used to. My first game that I remember was a Rams game. We played the Rams. It might have been in week 2, or I thought it was a week 3 or week 4. I remember the game because I paid extra attention and made some little notes during the game because I took it that seriously. That did not last long, but I do remember that game in particular. It was that defensive masterclass where the Rams ran the ball down our throats on their first possession, went 80 yards down the field, ran it in, and we're like, oh god, this could be bad. And it was I think it was 7-0. Then we came straight back, and then I don't think the Rams got a first down until the back end of the third quarter. Remember that game? And I think we won 24-7 in the end, and we just didn't give them a yard. I think their offense in the first half after that drive was like -7 yards or something. I can remember that game because that was the one I think Salah's real first defensive masterclass. And it was against the Rams, and it was. I remember enjoying the review show with Lee on the Monday.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, like you said before we move off, I remember saying to Lee a few times, Nadji, like, you helped me with my understanding of watching the game, like when we were preparing, and you'd say, watch the game, take the emotion out of it. And like you said, Gareth, I tried to make notes, and I thought, I can't do this. So that's why I watched the game back a couple of days after, and I think the way we were structured with the pod, and I think the fact that us four have these kind of therapy sessions when things aren't going so well, and then you try and put the message in the group, and like you said, Lee, we try to remain upbeat. Yeah, we can be critical, and it's just crazy to think that, you know, our community has a show that's got 300 episodes, so here's to the next 300.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I think some of them have even been listened to by people out there as well. So that's you know.
I did check the stats this morning. I think we were 20 away from 25,000 downloads last year. So, you know, massive thank you to everyone that's here right now and listening to us on podcast and everything. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I do need to go and listen back to the old show to see how far we've come along. I feel like we've become better at it. I don't know if it's true or not, but it feels like
Less terrible.
I remember being on my little
So me being a
tablet.
perfectionist, I'd be listening to the audio quality.
Yeah,
Because
right,
obviously
yeah.
when we did it on Skype,
Just download,
I felt as though the audio quality on Skype was much better
Yeah,
than what we
Was
get
it?
here. Because I think even though you get the WAV file, I think it's still compressed. In fact, I can guarantee
course
you
it is compressed.
it's compressed.
of course.
Whereas when I was recording them all locally on my machine, I was using Logic Pro X to
Here we
record it.
go.
So I was getting the full stream coming through and it wasn't compressed. And then I could make a better quality audio recording. Like I said, I mean, I've got a little bit of OCD. I mean, everybody that knows as well knows I've got a little bit of OCD. And when I started, the very first episode I started that we recorded and I published, I went through and I took out every single
I remember
every
doing
breath.
my first edits
and
as well.
it took me 6 hours
Yeah,
to edit that podcast.
yeah, my first edit was
and I did that for the
probably
first
that long
2
as well.
seasons.
Yeah.
For the first 2 seasons, I did that, and then I thought, balls to that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nobody's
I
going to
remember.
notice anyway, and they don't care.
I remember us when you weren't able to edit and I was doing it. I remember us finishing to record and spending like 5-6 hours after just like
Yeah.
going over all the audio and getting rid of all the and everything like one by
Yeah.
one by one. It's just, sorry everyone for the tuna. And
There we
yeah,
go. It's a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go.
And just put
Right.
those in, so I now need to edit them out.
Though,
You will do. You will do.
to be fair, though, I think what
Yeah,
we're trying to
time
demonstrate to
agrees.
everyone is like tonight, we've gone live at 8 o'clock. Obviously, we decided to mark the 300th episode, but it might not seem it. There is prep behind the scenes. There is the time. There is the hard work. And we do appreciate everybody that does download the show because it makes it worthwhile.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
us four
Yeah, it does.
talking football. So,
I mean, we would still do it because it is good and it really is a therapy session. I always feel much better, especially after a bad loss. And wins are so much better when we talk about them. But yeah, the fact that everybody listens and supports us and it keeps on growing. As I said, I think it was 18,000 in 2024 or in 2023 and then 25,000 in 2024. So, we keep growing, which is really, really nice to see. And thank you again. That's all I can say to everybody.
So
that's here
if
right
I'm
now.
honest, I think we'll regress a little bit this year purely because of the performances of the team.
Yeah,
Because
that's
January
the
and
thing.
February last year, we nowhere near those stats.
But we also
because
have
obviously we haven't played.
We
also
haven't had the
have a lot
games
less
to
shows.
talk about.
We've got
Yeah.
at least 8 or 10 shows less because there's no preview of games. So yeah.
and we've taken a bit of time. Like the last few seasons, it's been either
full of
NFC
them,
Championship game or bust.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
this off season we've kind of taken the time. I mean, that brings us back, chaps, that the scouting combine is over. The next date on the NFL calendar is the opening of free agency. But the only place I feel we should start this conversation is the trade of Deebo Samuel. It broke just before midnight on Saturday in the UK, which I've got to admit, I saw my phone light up and I thought, oh my God, as if they've broke the news now. Because I know Najee's talked about jumping live when something like this happens. And I thought, imagine saying to Tracy, oh, by the way, we're just going to do a podcast at 12:15 and talking about why Deebo Samuel has gone to the Washington Commanders for a 5th round draft pick. So is it okay if we start here tonight, chaps?
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's talk
crack
about
on,
Debo.
buddy.
Yeah. Well,
Debo.
first of all, I want to say thank you, Debo, for everything you've given us over the last few years. It's been a joy to watch you play, kinda, sometimes, more on that now.
Yeah,
But yeah, no,
some good
Yeah.
times, some really good
definitely
times.
some good
So-
times, some really nice touchdowns. I remember the one against Dallas where just basically outran all the defense. It was just beautiful to see. So yeah, those memories will live long with me. A special player that we've had the chance to have on our team, and it's a bit of a shame, but also I personally think it was the right thing to do, and it's I think the right time as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
One
well,
can argue
no, I think
we
it's
should
the
have
wrong
done
time.
it last year,
I
but
think it should have happened 3 seasons ago.
yeah, 2021 was kind of the peak, wasn't it?
We'd have missed out on some good memories. Well, 2022 when we were at the draft. We should have traded and then traded up into the first round, and then me and you could have wiggled our way into the first round.
That would have been nice, yeah. That's
It would
true.
have been.
So,
Yeah.
so to be fair, what I wanted to talk about is there's a lot of discussion around it was only a 5th round draft pick, but they do pick up Debo's 17.55 million salary due this year. But there is talk about the dead cap, the salary cap. So that's why I wanted to start here tonight before we went any further on free agency. So we will take a massive amount of dead money with the trade. And if my figures are correct, it's 31.2 million. The big number has come about due to the salary cap gymnastics we've had to do. And Debo was actually restructured last year, which I think you're alluding to, Lee. We shouldn't have restructured, but it helped at the time. And I think we've been playing this kind of gymnastic with the salary cap because it's going up, because obviously they reduced it after the COVID year. But I mean, are you unhappy with the 5th round, or are you just happy to see the contract gone? I'll go over to Gareth first, because obviously...
I think we talked about it. I think a 5th round had been mentioned as probably the start. I think we might have hoped to have got a little more than a 5th round pick, maybe swapping 6th or 7th in our favour as well. But I'm happy with that. I think he wanted to go. I think as soon as that happens, then there's very little option other than to let the player go. I think there's some respect there. Obviously, he's come out and he's shown a bit of class. He said nothing but love for Kyle and John, nothing but love for the team. Just, I need a fresh start. I need to go somewhere different, and that's probably good for him. I think we'd seen Debo's special qualities diminished, and I think Debo really shone that season where we suddenly started using him as a runner because we ran out of running backs, and our quarterback play at the time wasn't perhaps great as it could be. So we found a niche for him, but I think that's gone. And I think really it was when McCaffrey arrived, it suddenly we didn't need to add the extra Debo dimension, and I think by then people had sussed it out as well. And I think at that point, the combination of those two things, Debo's effectiveness dropped off a cliff. And it's not necessarily about him and his performances. It's just about how the team has moved on, maybe a more quarterback-driven offense, a proper running back who can catch a pass as well. Suddenly, Debo's special qualities became less special. And unfortunately, if he's just a wide receiver, he's kind of middle of the pack. I think there's some great traits about him, but
it's actually worse than that. He was rated 94th on man coverage on PFF. So out of all wide receivers,
he's great at breaking the tackle. And he's
great in space, great in zone, but
not so good at catching the ball. But
no, I think that as soon as we lost Ayuk, especially this year, and people started playing man against us a lot, that's just not what Debo is good at, and especially on a lesser form. He has been not playing as well as he could have, and I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because we've always said he's one of one, and I still believe he is one of one. I don't think there is any other player in the league that's exactly quite like Debo, and so it's a shame to lose that kind of special talent that you can't really replace with anyone, because it just doesn't exist. But also, I think, as Lee said, we probably should have capitalized and try and get a little bit more. A 5th is good, especially with the amount of money he was going to get paid. It's always, when you do trades, it's always, if you can pay the guy 1 million without having to restructure, you're probably going to get a third for it. But if you're going to have to pay 17 million and take the rest of the contract that is just signed, it's always going to be a 5th or a 6th. I think a 5th is pretty good, and we've been pretty good at drafting 5th round picks. So
I think it's a fairly early in the 5th round pick. If I got it right, it's actually the Saints' 5th round pick that has ended up with the Commanders. It's not the Washington's 30th in the round pick.
Right.
If I'd understood it correctly, I think they got it from the Saints. So I think it's kind of 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that.
Yeah, and wasn't the 5th round the one that we forfeited for that misdemeanor, so we technically didn't have a 5th round pick, and now we
There
do.
you go.
And I just asked the question, Nadji, because the Washington Commanders UK group have reached out and asked me a couple of questions for their podcast, and I've got them here in front of me. The first question is, who do you feel won the trade? Us or them, basically? And I was like, that is a very good question. So
I think we did. We really need to start moving on. We've talked about the team making hard decisions from players that have been, franchise players, and this makes sense, especially as you said, Gareth. He wanted to go. If you start having him back, then your question is, but does he want to play? Does he want to be here? Is he going to show up in training camp overweight again? And all that kind of stuff starts creeping up again, and it just makes for bad. You just start talking about something else than football and what he can do on the field. And I think we did, because we've shifted 17 million in cap space, and we look good. Like, this is a good business move. Is it going to bite us back if the Commanders play in the playoff and we play them? Maybe, but also it could just disappear into oblivion, and it would be the best trade ever. I think we won it, but it'll do good at the Commanders for sure. It's Adam Peters and Jaden Daniels. So.
Yeah, I think somebody needs to send him a box of Twinkies this off-season. See how he gets on with those.
I mean, Gareth said it well there when you were saying, before we moved off Debo, I think the 2021 Debo, we all look fondly upon that, the weapon. You talked about that playoff game in Dallas, and there's an article on Niners Nation which has a memorable Debo moment for each year while he was here. And he's kind of been one of those players in our team where Tracy doesn't take much notice as I talk about football. But even she said, Debo Samuel's been with the team the whole time that we've been together. And she was quite shocked from a neutral point of view that he was going. I know Connor Ryan is very upset at the moment. And I think his offer to get rid of his dog Debo on Discord might not have been as joking as it seemed. But Connor, stand fire. But we all have a Debo moment. Now mine is a bit left field. I remember at the watch party in Leeds where Nick Clark had told us to keep it all hush hush. And if you remember, Lee, we were all on the tables for you to drink that day, chanting Debo, and Nick got his phone out. And I think that's what captured the Niners fan engagement team with this kind of love that we were in a sports bar in Leeds and we were all chanting Debo Samuel. And then obviously I think certain players, now I'm torn between the Dallas game that Nadji's mentioned and the Eagles game last year, because I love the fact that he talked trash and he just went into there. And I think the Commanders fans, with the Eagles being in their division, are thinking, if he can play like that against the Eagles every year.
And Dallas. He played well against Dallas.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
So
I'll go to you firstly. I want a Debo moment before we move on and talk about free agency and contract and stuff.
It's got to be against the Rams when he flattened Jalen Ramsey after having a to and fro on Twitter or Facebook, whatever it was, Instagram, I don't know, whatever you call it nowadays. But they were having a right set to on social media, and he went and flattened him. And to me, I mean, two reasons. Obviously, it's the Rams. I love to see that happen to any Rams player, and it just made my day that watching that game and watching Jalen Ramsey look like a fool. That was good. And a very close second was a very similar thing against the Eagles with Bradbury. He did exactly the same there, and he stepped up and he backed up the words he was saying on social media, and that run that he had was just unbelievable. So those are my two moments. But the Rams game, the Jalen Ramsey, get back in your box and shut up. Love that.
What about you, Gareth?
Probably that playoff game against Dallas, still tight at that time, and it's the way that everybody shifts over to that side, and Debo's looking for the gap, and then sort of stops and comes back and somehow finds it where there shouldn't really be a gap, and has that turn of speed that he did have, or does still have. We haven't seen it enough, but he could put the burners on, and as soon as he got that head of steam up, no one was tackling him. And I think it was one of those moments that we needed to play. I think was the one where Debo was saying, "Give me the ball, coach. Put the ball in my hand, and I'll win this game for us." It was still tight at the time, and I think that was a off the seat in the small hours of the morning moment, screaming Debo. So good.
What about you,
Good
Najee?
times.
I mean, it's all of the above, isn't it? This kind of like unstoppable force that he had become, when he got the ball in space, it was just such a joy to watch him just take off and being unstoppable and just running people over. And he kind of did it once this year, and we're like, yes, he's back, against Miami. And just like, if only we could have kept this going year after year. Unfortunately, as we say, you go injury prone, and I don't think his heart was quite in it sometimes. And he has been accused of, taking plays off and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, the Rams, the Dallas game, those two plays are they're gonna stay in there. And it's one of those plays that we will keep seeing them in highlights, Niner highlights, and playoff highlights for years and years and years to come. And but yeah, it's just like the Debo. There was only one of them running the way he ran. As soon as you didn't need to see his number or his jersey. You knew it was Debo that had the ball, and it was probably going on the way no one was tackling him. So.
And he always seemed to do well against Seattle as well. Remember that game at home last year where there was the bomb, and then Jennifer Lee Chan and they were talking on their podcast this week, 49ers talk about the boombox and Debo coming from kind of into that era where they were kind of bringing the confidence out, and now him and Trent, obviously the boombox era won't be there. But the reason I was bringing it back, Lee, is a few people are still hung up on the fact that this trade is going to see a lot of dead cap. But that's not new with this team. I mean, I cast my mind back to D Ford. We seem to be paying him forever. We still owe $15 million to Eric Armstead. And obviously a lot of people are getting themselves upset with the Brock Purdy negotiations. That's where I'm going to transition this to. So, I mean, the Niners are a team that consistently jumps through the hoops to stay cap compliant. But I wasn't going to talk about Brock today. But at work this afternoon, I saw a few tweets, I saw a few messages, and a few people seem to be upset that we've only offered Brock $45 million a year.
Well,
so
I want to jump in here because I do not believe anything that I read about contract negotiation about when it comes to the Niners. If there's one thing the Niners, John, Parag, Kyle, and Jed are very good at, it's not having any leaks or anything coming out ever. I think these numbers are once again one of those things that they pretend to leak out to see where it goes, and then they can catch whoever's leaking the information. I don't believe for a second that Brock Purdy has been offered $45 million. He's going to be north of 50, 100%, and we'll see when it comes out. But yeah, I don't believe it, and I'm not going to get upset, and I'm not going to talk about it until he signs his deal, and then we can talk about it.
So what you're telling me, Nadji, is the reason why Chris Wood has been very quiet on Discord is for that very reason. It's tactical. Now I can get on board with that. Conor Ryan is trying to steal a throne with the breaking news king, and we'll get to that. But I mean, if the figures are to be believed, it would be the 13th ranked quarterback contract in the NFL. And the person who is the source has talked about basically that if Brock doesn't take this deal, the Niners can let him play out this year, and then we can tag him for $41 million in 2026, and then tag him again for $51 million in 2027. Now, the Bengals have tried this with T. Higgins, and I don't think he's very happy at being franchise tagged 2 years running. What do you reckon, Lee?
I'm the same mind as Nadji, you know. Let's just let it play out. I don't care about the dead money that's hanging about in the background. I don't think that's going to affect Brock Purdy's contract at all. I think the information you put on the screenshot of the tweet that basically says, look, if he doesn't sign the $45 million, he's going to be playing on $5 million this year, $41 million next year, and I think it was $45 million the year after. So he's going to be playing on a lot less for the next 3 years if he doesn't sign that contract. And I think he knows that the organisation wants him here. I think the organisation are going to try and do as good by him as possible, as long as they can keep a competitive team for him. And I think he knows that. I think he knows he needs a competitive team, and he needs to be a bit of a team player. And I think that's the type of guy he is. Could be wrong, but just the way he comes across in interviews, the way he comes across in everything he does, he seems like one of these players that are not particularly driven by money, as opposed to the likes of Deebo Samuel, who from day one, to me, I thought, yeah, he's driven by money.
A wide receiver, though. But...
Yeah, diva.
I mean, bear in mind, chaps, Ty Alston tweeted out the perfect bit of advice, and I'm glad he's in the show tonight because I was always going to name drop Ty, one of my favourite content creators. Don't believe anybody that doesn't quote tweet. So if you're not on Twitter, that did make me chuckle. But it's just, we're at that stage, aren't we, chaps? We're saying that the league season's due to start March 12th. I don't think any of us would have thought the Niners were going to announce Brock Purdy was signed March 12th. It's not what we do. It's a salary cap. But it's just, we're approaching that wonderful free agency / draft. Now, I haven't done any mock drafts yet. I'm leaving that to Lee. But didn't you say off early that you've got 151 players or something that you've looked at? Or I remember there was a lot of players.
I've got 13 listed down. 13. So it's interesting because, this is my favourite time of the year.
This is free agency, these players, aren't they? They're not draft players.
I mean, free agency. I enjoy this because you can make a big dent in strengthening your team in free agency, and you don't have to break the bank to do it. So I've got 5 players listed, and of those 5, there's only one who's in the top 100 free agents list. And he is, admittedly, my number 1 target. So
did he play for Stanford at any point?
He did,
right.
Actually.
All right.
Sharp
We know where you're going.
So Drew Dalman.
That is the correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Centre from Atlanta Falcons and Stanford. His dad played for us back in the 80s.
Yep.
And I think he'd be an immediate upgrade on Jake Brendel.
I agree.
And you'll see the theme here. My number 2 player, who is ranked as the 50th best player on the top 101 free agents, is Mekhi Becton from the Eagles, guard. He's a brilliant run blocker. So I think he could take over from Aaron Banks, and having Becton opposite Pooney as the 2 guards with Dalman in the middle, straight away that gives us one hell of an O-line. And then my 3rd pick is also O-line, and this is to replace Colton McKivitz, and this is Jedrick Wills from the Browns. So he played a little bit left tackle last year, but in college he played at right tackle, and he's uncomfortable. You can see he was uncomfortable at left tackle. I would just move him straight across to the right tackle, and I mean he's ranked as 91 on the top 100. And you tend to find, based off the rankings, you can get cheaper players further down the rankings.
You said this is your favourite time of year, so why is it your favourite time of year? Just that's an interesting.
Because it sets you up. It sets you up really good for the draft, because all you want to be doing in free agency is just looking for 1 or 2 players. 1 or 2 players who are going to be in pivotal positions at your greatest need. You want to get some experience in there, so you've got a known quantity. Yes, you might have to pay a little bit more than what you're willing to pay, but I think you can make a big dent in improving your roster, because ultimately we're going to have 10 draft picks. If we've got 10 draft picks and it's a deep draft in defensive edge, defensive tackle, we can significantly upgrade our defense during the draft, which is why I wouldn't be too eager for us to go out and get anybody in free agency apart from 2 players.
Ooh.
So number 4 and number 5 on my top 5 list need no introduction whatsoever. So rank number 92, DJ Jones.
I'd have him back in his shot.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I bet Salah would like to have him back.
True.
And rank number 59, Charles Omenihu. And I just want him to come back, so Paul has to say his name.
Yeah,
Charlie boy, King Charles. Yes. I mean,
well for us.
To be honest, Gareth, I know when Lee mentioned that, we said it wasn't going to be that show tonight. It wasn't going to be a free agency show. But the reason why I raised it before we recorded tonight, I did see some news that Aaron Banks is expected to receive top 6 guard money in free agency.
Really?
And he's looking to make between 18 and 20 million in free agency. And that's come from Tom Pelissero, NFL Network. So it isn't just somebody tweeting from, an unknown source. And that's what I'm saying. Actually, sometimes got to be careful, because that is...
O-line gets paid good O-line, there is not that many good O-line in this league. There is a lot of very average O-line in this league. A lot of them. The good ones, and Aaron Banks, I think, has proven that he's good. Yes, he had a slightly less good year, but just remember he didn't have Trent next to him, and I still don't buy the Brendel was actually a good thing. That he got an award and everything, but I think he's a good guard, and we would be stupid to lose him because it's very difficult to replace good players. I'll also be very careful losing Colton McKivitz because he's just above average or very average at the best, and that's just the best you can do at a position, because the guy that's above him that's actually good is going to cost you 35 million a year, and we can't really afford that. So I like the Drew Dolman thing, but I think it's a little bit. I think it would cost us probably too much money.
Do you think that's where Kyle and his scheme, and that's a lot of people saying, "Oh, we don't invest."
He has done it so many times, right? Like, centers is Kyle's second favorite thing to get. We got Alex Mack, and he paid. I can't remember who he was when he was at the Browns. Well, he was Mack, and he always has a good center. So it wouldn't surprise me if he does it, and goes and gets him and maybe pays him 10 million a year or something. But yeah, there's also, I like what you said about free agency, Lee. There's also something that I think is very vastly underrated, and it's something the fan base kind of gets hung out of. It doesn't really actually make that much matter, but to me, winning the free agency is actually quite important because it sets you up for OTAs in a completely different way. That if half of the league thinks that you haven't done enough, and some of the players on your team might think that you haven't done enough to compete this year, and it sets you on this path of competition. If you feel good coming into training camp, even if you feel like you have to play at your best to be on this team, it pushes everybody up a little bit, just a level. So I think going out there in free agency and making a splash or making several little splash is actually really important because it sets your team A for the draft, B for OTAs and training camp after that. It just everybody just kind of feel like, oh, this is a good team. I'm going to have to be good to stay on this team.
Yeah.
And then everything gets brought.
I mean, I remember when we signed Hargrave. He was the number one free agent that year.
I don't care. Yeah, exactly.
I remember us four coming on and being like, Hargrave, right wow, now,
Yeah. What I would do right now if I was Kyle and John is get Miles Garrett. I don't care what it costs, and I don't care what you mortgage. Just get him, and then you've won the off season, and then everything else will just fall into place after that.
There's very few. Well, admittedly, that's trading really rather than free agency. But there's very few free agents that's.
I'm not saying it's.
I was dead assert as Miles Garrett.
I would try my hardest. Yeah, Western Ridgeburg. Thank you, Neil. Is another one Kyle was really high on and got him in. So he does do that quite often, and it wouldn't surprise me if we go out and get him.
He wants the experience, I think, in the centre. So.
Well, Ty's put there, Gareth, before you go there, there's a lot of teams that need a centre. And it's a double-edged sword. I mean, we all raved over Hargrave. He's going to be looking for a new team. The Niners have told people he's healthy. He's going to be gone. But you're right, Nadji. I mean, again, you go back to everyone hated McGlinchey and the Broncos paid him. But apparently the top guard was Trey Smith. And the Chiefs have put the franchise tag on him. It's not often you put a franchise tag on a guard. And when you look at Banks' stats, Gareth, he's going to get paid. And we're not going to pay him.
I saw they traded Tooney to the Bears again for a fourth round pick. And I think the Bears picked up someone from the Rams. They picked up 2 O-linemen today. I think traded for them both. Everybody needs a better offensive line. I think Kyle has shown that he can do a lot with less, but as we've always talked about, it's so important. It is so important to have a reliable offensive line, and if we're going to pay Brock as we are, we got to protect him. And surely seeing McCaffrey with someone clearing space for him, there's nothing better than McCaffrey with his ball in hand. And unfortunately, you need the O-line to allow him to do that. So I would like to see some money spent there. I think free agency, you can't win the season, but you can lose it with a bad free agency. And I think the worst thing to do is pay top money for mediocre players. Sure. That's to be avoided. People panicking, and as Lee said, if you get the right couple of players, I think one of the important things is to go into the draft without glaring needs. And I think that helps you navigate the draft. It helps you choose the best players available. And setting up free agency well means you can draft well. And if you don't make the right choices in free agency, that's where you suddenly end up reaching in the draft and picking players who aren't worth the position you've drafted them.
Not yet, Nadji, because before we finish off on this topic. So we say, Gareth, teams always overpay and are rarely satisfied in free agency. Look at Laken Tomlinson. We paid big. He's been on a couple of teams since then. We talked about McGlinchey. The good thing is, if Panks gets paid like he's expected to, we'll get a comp pick as well, which you've just said there sets you up for the draft. So I'm quite happy for him to go and get paid, because hopefully we'll find somebody that gives us 90% of the production he's given us, and we get a comp pick and at a fraction of the cost.
I think there's one question that needs to be answered before we even touch the O-line. Is Trent coming back and playing, and is he fit?
Definitely. He says, yeah. That's been the word.
It has been the word, but we cannot go for a season like we just did. And I fully understand why that season went the way it went on his side, and I'm not blaming him, but it is absolutely crucial that we start there, because if Trent's gone, then it's a whole different story. Like it becomes the need and the priorities to find a left tackle. So
I think we do. It's there anyway, because we're going to need to replace Trent. And
don't be dodging the question, Nadji. This is what the people want to hear. What Chris has dropped on the screen for those people listening.
Yeah,
so if you're in Discord, you'll have seen. I was going to do a Would You Rather, Nadji. Jordan Mason or your draft crush? Because I thought, which one would you pick? But come on, buddy, answer the question.
So the rumors, for the people that haven't been on Discord or haven't been on social media, is that we might look at trading Jordan Mason. Well, at trying, what is it called? Because he's a restricted free agent, so we might put like a second round tender on it, and if somebody wants to pay him, then we will get a second round for him, in with which we could take Cam Scatterby with. And so it would essentially be a Mason trade for Cam Scatterby, and I hate it. I want them both on my team, and I'm being serious, especially with I have no idea what CMC is out health-wise. I would rather have Jordan Mason and Cam Scatterby than just CMC himself by himself. I would rather have two very good running back, or potentially very good running back. We're not sure if Scatterby is going to transition into the NFL the way he played in college. That's a big F. But we know we need a committee, so I would take two running backs rather than the one. But God, I hate this question.
It's your friend. You were defending him earlier, and look, he comes and drops that bomb on you.
Ultimately, there is 32 teams that are looking at him, and I think it's a very, very high running back class. So I think running back is just going to be pushed up a little bit, because people are going to be a bit antsy about. As soon as Ashton Genty is off the board, we will see all the running back going on and after one. So it wouldn't surprise me if we don't get him. It's not really a need that we have. After we still have Garando, and we still have Elijah Mitchell on the roster. So
and there's I had a list of a look at who'd been released. Obviously, Mostert got released. Jeff Wilson got released, both from the Dolphins, and Jermichael Hasty got released. So there's three guys hanging around who may well be able to be picked up. I think Mostert's probably a bit bit old now because obviously he'd been around the league. But yeah, well, I'd have any of those guys back at a veteran minimum for sure. So
Neil Graham,
Absolutely, me too.
friend of the show, has said that there's a couple of wideouts he'd be interested in free agency. They're young and shouldn't cost too much, and that's Brown and Westbrook.
Jamie Brown
Keenan.
will get resigned by the Commanders 100%. Westbrook at Kane, I'm not sure what the Titans. He plays for the Titans, right? I think it's Titans. They need
Not
weapons.
sure when actually.
I don't think they'll let him go.
I
I think
so,
he's
yeah.
a Titan, and they're probably gonna draft a QB, so they'll need wide receivers out.
Do you think wide receiver has suddenly become a more urgent need now Debo's gone? The talk of Brandon Ayuk. No.
What would it be? I think that it's actually really, now that Debo's gone, I'm really hopeful Cowing takes a better role next year. And I was really
agreed.
not quite sure whether it would stay on the roster at all. But now that Debo's gone, I think that Purcell is obviously now number 3.
Yeah.
Or number 2.
Do you think Kyle's going to mix his scheme up a little bit now? You talked about a lot of teams playing man against us last year and Debo not being very well then. Obviously, Jennings is definitely wide receiver number 1 at the moment, and he's probably going to play in the X position, isn't he? So, Ricky Purcell was drafted for his route running and his separation, which I think we were 32nd in the league last year, chaps, at separation, which isn't very good when there's only 32 teams in the league.
I know, yeah. It's hard to judge. Obviously, we lost so much, and when CMC is not on the field, the offense just looks completely different. There's no Ayuk, no CMC. It's like, all right, okay. I still think Ayuk's come back and plays the X, and then Jennings will play the Y, and Pearson will play the Z. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. We might just draft somebody that wows us at camp. And
when do you think Ayuk's back though? Because I think Jennings plays the Ayuk role unless something happens in free agency or drafting. Because I don't think Ayuk's due back for the first 6 weeks, is he? I don't think they reckon.
We never know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to start speculating on our starting 11 in March.
I nearly got him, people. I nearly got him. But it's a rabbit hole. But, Gareth, we are going to be bringing some more draft shows, some more free agency. There was a question for you, Lee. Are you going to be doing a live draft show like you've done in recent years?
Yes, we are. So Sarah has quite kindly offered to set up a Zoom call again for the first night of the draft. I will actually be up in Scotland in Falkirk watching it with Brett Sinclair.
Breaking
so
news.
I'll be live from the Candlestick Inn.
I think if we can.
What state I'm going to be in, I don't know.
I think we should. Obviously, we have, this podcast is always growing and we're trying different things, but I do feel like we should try and do a watch and live, so we could do live reaction to everything that's happening. It'd be pretty cool. Just have the Zoom in, have the YouTube on, and just have a good time with a bunch of Niner fans and see what. Because we could pick quite early, unless we trade down, obviously. But 11 it's not too bad.
So is that the Thursday, Lee? You'll be up in the Candlestick Inn or the draft?
Yeah,
or
so I'll travel up the Thursday, and obviously the first round generally starts about 1:15 in the morning for us. It's supposed to start at 1 o'clock, but by the time Roger Goodell's prattled on for 15 minutes, they don't generally start the clock until about 1:15 in the morning. I wouldn't expect us to be picking until probably 3:15.
So you just stood up with Brett for the Thursday. Are you doing the Thursday and the Friday? What's your...
Where is it this year?
I am unsure yet. It might just be the Thursday because surprisingly the hotels are quite expensive. Up in Falkirk, I was expecting them being a little bit cheaper, but with it being midweek, they are quite expensive. So it might just be that Thursday night.
Ah. Well, chaps, we've smashed the 23-minute mark, which I knew we would. And even though this has been the last episode of the season for the podcast, with the new league season starting on March 12th, fear not, the Awesome Foursome will be back. As always, there's plenty to talk about, as we've shown tonight. Free agency, draft season, and we will be bringing you the inside scoops, courtesy of our own insider, Connor Ryan, who is the new official insider. You heard it here first. So make sure you have those notifications switched on. You subscribed to wherever you get your pods from. And as always, chaps, it's been a pleasure. And before we finish off, do each of you have any final thoughts? And I will come to Gareth first. Any final thoughts, buddy?
Final thoughts on what?
Just
On
whatever
anything?
you want. On anything, Gareth.
On
The
anything.
floor is yours.
I think this off season is possibly going to be make or break for Kyle and John. I think if they botch this one, I think there's going to be some questions. They traded 3 first-round picks to get a quarterback who now doesn't have a team. Very, very few general managers and coaches survive that. Just putting it out there. I think they can do it. I'm confident in them, but I think if it's really difficult to build a Super Bowl caliber team, but it's incredibly difficult to keep one going over and over again. And we've had that, and we're in that stage where a lot of teams, you see it. You're good. You maintain it for 2 or 3 years. You don't get over the hump, and then suddenly you're in a wasteland. So I don't want to be on a downer.
I'm going to say, cheers, Gareth.
But we're going to end the season on one. Go on, someone give some more.
Hey, Gareth, we got more for Trey Lance than we did for Deebo Samuel. Yeah. So put some respect on his name. I'm on
Absolutely, and bargain. Therefore,
that man has a family,
right? Yeah. Oof, God. I wasn't going to talk about this. I was going to talk about our 300 anniversary, but I've actually listened to the Athletic podcast, and as doom and gloom as Gareth made it sound, we've been here before. If you look at the 2019 roster compared to the 2021 roster, and all of the rosters that made it to the championship or the Super Bowl, they've been very, very, very different. We have been able to reinvent ourselves and change the team and look different and bring in new talent and keep the ones that we need to keep. So I have full confidence that this is exactly what's going to happen. Happy 300th episode to us. And it's going to be a great season. Sal is back. We've got picks. And then, we'll if there's a massive news that we sign Myles Garrett, we'll do a episode.
Curtis, depending on the time, Nadji, because if it's midnight on a Saturday night, given that, no, I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
So,
Lee, any final thoughts after episode 300?
Oh, so, 300 episodes has just absolutely flown by. It has. I was absolutely gobsmacked when I realised, luckily I realised, that we sat on 299. It's been a pleasure to talk football with you guys week in, week out. It does help, especially when we don't play particularly well. But it also helps to keep us grounded as well, because, as you know, tongue in cheek, I always say we're going to go 20-0. I don't honestly think that, but you guys do keep us grounded, so thank you for that. And thank you for making the season such an enjoyable thing to watch. It is really appreciated. And I'd just like to thank the Academy for voting for me.
Well, we know it's going to be well looked after, Nadji, so...
I haven't stopped stroking it. or the trophy.
I don't want to win it next year now.
Talk about finishing on Gareth said a negative thought, but anyway, Lee, thank you, buddy. But a big thank you to everyone who listens, watches, downloads the shows. As we said earlier, it does mean the world to us. If you haven't already, do check us out on social media, especially Discord. Search for 49er Faithful UK or send us a DM. And all that is left for me to say is remember, folks, there's only 26 Sundays until NFL returns. Stay safe and go Niners.
Go Niners.
Go Niners.
Bang, bang, Nana gang.
We love the San Francisco 49ers deep in the heart. Like Joe Montana in the corner, G. Clark, Garrison Hurst, stiff.